All right, now we're going to take a intermission break to bring up our good friend.
Friend of the show.
He was with us last week, so he's coming back
Put
for
on a
a
hell of a
return visit
performance.
for sure. Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Let's bring Caleb up.
Caleb, my good brother.
What's going on?
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
For sure, man. Thank you so much. So, if anybody missed it, you was with us last week for Earn Your Leisure. We did a live tutorial on crypto 101 for beginners. So check that out if you haven't. If a lot of great information about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and everything that you need to know. And today we're going to be switching gears. And I know you want to talk about some of the hot topics, I believe, right, on the site of year.
Right. Every year, Investopedia likes to quantify, to see what our users were looking for. We got millions of readers coming to us every single day, every single month, looking for an answer to something. It could be just a definition. It could be an explanation. It could be a question. How do I invest $10,000, 401k, Roth IRA? So everybody has an individual question. That's the thing about finance. It's super personal. But looking at those over time, aggregating those over time, gives us a sense of where our psyches were as investors throughout this incredible year. And for investors, it's been an incredible year. Am I right? We don't get back-to-back years of plus 25% very often, and we don't get these rallies in risk assets like we've had this year every single year. So it's been fun to watch, and I'd love to share them. So every year we're looking to see what people are looking for, and it shouldn't be a big surprise that inflation was our top term of 2024. It was on everybody's mind. Not only was it on everybody's mind, even though the growth rate of inflation was slowing, it was the thing that kind of turned the tide in a lot of different ways, especially the election. So people were watching inflation closely. They knew the headline numbers were coming down, and you guys can relate to this, but they didn't feel like they were paying any less for anything, and that's because they weren't. The rate of growth was slowing, but inflation was still prevalent. It's still prevalent today. It'll probably be a popular term next year. And then the thing that they were making this decision with, among the economic decisions they were making, is if they elect President Trump back into office, they're going to get tariffs. So tariffs became a very big theme with our readers throughout the second half of the year, especially as the campaign and the election heated up quite a bit. That was fun and fascinating to watch. And then it's rare to have a company dominate our top 10, but NVIDIA was that company in 2024, arguably in 2023 as well. But the returns from a company like NVIDIA that became the story stock, I've been watching you guys every single week. I know you've been talking about it and talking about the other chip makers, but NVIDIA was a stock that all of a sudden people were gathering together and having earnings watch parties like regular people, not people like me and Ian and you guys, but regular folks were getting together and watching the NVIDIA earnings reports, listening to every word Jensen Huang had to say. That became a super important story. And then stock split followed that right behind because NVIDIA had that big 10-for-1 stock split, which just shows you the behavior of investors. They know about this company. They hear about a stock split. They know the stock is going to get cheaper. And what do? They go and they investigate what it means when a stock splits. We also had 340 other stock splits, including Walmart, but that was on people's minds. And then another one that really got my attention, Bitcoin, for obvious reasons. That was the risky but very profitable asset for a lot of people. And the money line bet, guys. This was the first year where the betting polls on the election were actually more accurate than the polls themselves, which have gotten more and more inaccurate over the years. But you could bet on the outcome of the election, and Polymarkets really kicked it off. But you could do it on Robinhood. You could do it throughout Europe. You could do it on multiple sites. This is the year that really came together, and that, to me, I think is the beginning of a big trend in betting on just about everything. You can securitize everything, and you can bet on everything.
Yeah,
you have it.
That's a hell of a list. The one thing that's glaring to me, and it probably was on your list for 2023, is the word recession. We kept hearing that coming out of 2023 into 2024, the second half of the year or the last quarter. We're going to start to see recession or recessionary environments. Not on your list. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we ask our readers every 2 months, what are the things you're most worried about? Give us your top 10 concerns. Recession never made it past the top 5. What were they worried about? First, they were worried about interest rates. Then they had worries about geopolitical concerns because we had the war in Russia and Ukraine. We had the war in the Middle East. Then they were worried about the election, not necessarily the outcome of the election, but the political chaos that might have ensued if things went a certain way. We knew that was top of mind for them. And then it became things like the U.S. relations with China. But recession never got to them. They never felt like that was going to happen, even though that was a big threat. They felt like there were other things that were going to affect their portfolios. But from about June, July on until the rest of the year, when the Fed indicated that it would start lowering rates, risk was on big time, and the stock market basically took off and went into high gear, and they got very confident. They're as confident as we've seen them in the history of the time we've been surveying them right now, for obvious reasons. Stock markets at all-time highs, risk assets at all-time highs, the prospect of lower interest rates and less regulation. Green lights, guys.
So what about expectations for 2025?
Yeah, expectations for 2025, it looks like this. We asked them, what do you think the results will be in the stock market over the next 6 months? And then what do you think they will be going out the next 4 years? What it amounts to is that investors think the next 6 months are going to be really strong. Short-term returns are going to continue to be strong. After that, they are less confident about returns in the market. Now, why is that? They're concerned about the national debt, which is something nobody likes to talk about, but the fact that we're just printing more and more money, spending more and more money, and if we do have tariffs and we do have tax cuts, one is inflationary and one reduces the amount of revenue that the government is able to keep, they think that will impact their portfolios over time in the long term. But for the short term, they're in full sprint mode right now, and you can just see it in the behavior of individual investors and the markets themselves.
When we get to the end of 2025, do you think NVIDIA will still be on the top of that list, or do you think we'll see another company?
I think we'll probably see another company. Right?
Which one?
2023 and 2024 were the years of the build out for AI. Look at the amazing amount of money that the Alphabets, the Amazons, the Apples of the world, Salesforce, everybody is spending on AI. It's a zero-sum game. So that favors the chip builders. That favors the equipment builders. Look at Broadcom, look at the other chip makers that are building the infrastructure and the chips that are going to power AI supercomputing. And it benefits the energy companies. But look at the companies that have done super well just associated with both the AI build out and Bitcoin, the MicroStrategies of the world, right? The super micros of the world. These are the companies that have now dominated in terms of returns and in terms of investor interest. I think we'll see one of those types of companies at the top of the list, or a company like a Palantir, which is in the top 10 now of our investors' favorite holdings. We might see a company like that, which has got a lot of contracts with the government.
Yeah, you want to? Yeah, we looked at statistics based, obviously knowing the outcome of the election now. When the Republicans have cleaned the Washington sweep, right? They control the House, they control Senate. We've seen sectors perform really well. The top three being real estate, utilities, and energies. Going into 2025, knowing the sectors, are there ETFs that you're looking at saying, like, these are the ones that our users should be looking forward to if they're trying to begin in the investing journey?
Well, here are the top stocks investors would bet on for the next 10 years. See NVIDIA at the top of the list. But then when we ask him, what ETF would you buy and hold for the next 10 years? Guess what, guys? Investors like running with the herd. Individual investors like running with the herd with everybody else. So they're looking at things like the VTO. They're looking at the SPYs. They're looking at the Qs, the total stock market ETFs. We like to crowd together, right? If you see the most crowded trades in 2024, it was the NVIDIA trade, right? It was a crypto trade. It was the MicroStrategies, the super microcomputers of the world, the Mag 7, Mag 8 stocks still performing. But when you look at ETFs, we like to stick together with the biggest stocks and the biggest indexes. These are the ETFs they would buy and hold. But look at the chip sector ETF. SOX is on there, right? Some of the Bitcoin ETFs had a pretty good year, and people think that there's going to be a lot of viability in those going forward. So big year for ETFs. And guess what? The ETF industry, they're gearing up for the next $10 trillion in assets, because there's an ETF for everything right now, but just not enough for that industry. They're going to keep printing ETFs, and that should be really interesting to see over the next year to 5 years.
It's interesting that you said the consumer confidence as far as the rising debt. Ian, you gonna make it?
Hopefully. Trying.
I was watching Jamie Foxx and Snoop. They had a clip when he was talking about Trump. And he was like, this was like years ago. He was like, they gave me the virus.
They tried.
they tried to give me the virus.
Ian just works too hard. That's his problem.
True.
But that, connecting the dots, that's what all right. So they might be bearish on stocks, but I'm wondering how the sentiment is around crypto, because one of the things that Mike Novogratz said, as far as one of the catalysts that would be good for Bitcoin is a rising debt, because since it is, a hedge against inflation and alternative to the dollar, he thought that gold and Bitcoin would benefit from the national debt going up higher.
Yeah.
So do you see that optimism for Bitcoin works parallel to pessimism of the stock market?
I think risk on is what benefits Bitcoin in general. I don't think most individual investors make the correlation between a higher national debt, more government spending, more reticence from the biggest buyers of the 10-year U.S. Treasury, which is the most widely held asset on the planet, turning into more excitement about Bitcoin. I think the Bitcoin crowd, the people that understand it most, really get that the best. But what we have been asking our readers for the past several years is, would you consider exposing, your portfolio to more cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin? What would it take? Well, last year we had the introduction of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. That opened the market. We saw what happened to price then. And then we asked them, as Bitcoin, got near 100,000, would you consider buying Bitcoin now? Would you consider having it in your portfolio? Those numbers went from about 9% of our readers to about 25% of our readers. So it just tells you there's a lot of individual investor enthusiasm with Bitcoin. But as we learned last week and at the EYL podcast, a lot of people are still learning the basics of it. And when we look at the questions people ask around Bitcoin, they're asking things like, first of all, what is? Second of all, how do I buy? Third of all, what's the difference between Bitcoin, say, and Ripple, Robinhood, or Coinbase? They want to know what it is, and they want to know how to buy it, and they want to know which ones to buy. So this tells you there's still a lot of new investors that have no exposure to this. They've been hearing about it for long enough. They've heard their Aunt Jane ask them about it at the Thanksgiving table year after year after year. They haven't done anything about it. Guess what? They're ready to do something about it, and we know the supply is constrained, and we know that this government is very Bitcoin friendly. So I expect a lot more price increase probably for Bitcoin in the near term. We'll see how long that lasts. The other coins is what I'm concerned about, because Bitcoin, has proven itself to be a real asset that's now $1.5 trillion in market cap. The other coins, the meme coins, are the ones people flock to because they think they can make a quick buck. Those are usually ones where the bottom comes out quickly.
I'm pretty sure Bitcoin will do probably at least 100% return next year. I know you said NVIDIA probably won't be on that list for next year. Do you think NVIDIA prints sub 100% gain? It's crazy to even say that, but do you think they'll be in the normal range next year of like 40 to 80%?
And the fact that you say that's normal, Ian, is the crazy part.
It's insane, right? For them.
That's the crazy part. The crazy thing is that would actually be normal for us, like a normal return. But the reality is, we don't even know. There's so much enthusiasm behind that stock. Now, a lot of it was the only game in town for printing these chips that can power the AI servers and the supercenters, right? They have some competition now. And as I said, it's a zero-sum game with these companies. So they're going to spend as much as they absolutely need to, NVIDIA's customers, to get the infrastructure they need to control AI the way they want to. I don't see why it doesn't continue to do better. But the fact that this company can grow revenue 100%, right, year over year, for several years in a row now, how long can that be sustainable? We haven't even seen this Blackwell chip come out, so I have a feeling it could grow revenue and profits again next year meaningfully, and that could translate to a higher stock price, especially with a cheaper stock price given the split. The value is the same, it just appears cheaper, and that's very important for the psyche of individual investors. Price tag means a lot.
There's a word that hopefully is not on the 2025 list, but it's starting to come up in the news when we talk about inflation, and that word is stagflation. Can you break down what that is and why we should be worried about that?
Yeah, you don't want stagflation. That is not a boring bachelor party with Tom Hanks. That is when both prices are going down and unemployment is rising and the economy is slowing. So you don't want a decrease in prices at the same time you have a slowing economy and more people going out of work. That is a very bad sign. Usually it leads to a recession. Usually it leads to a pretty brutal recession. We want to avoid stagflation. We want to avoid disinflation. And believe it or not, a little inflation is actually good. The average inflation rate is 2.7% a year. You need a little inflation for pricing power. Companies need to be able to raise prices a little bit so they can pay their workers more, so we can go spend more money, and that's how the wheel goes round. You don't want stagflation, you don't want disinflation. A little bit Goldilocks inflation would be just right.